Faruqi and Osman Faruqi, her children, together with other family members. Dr. Faruqi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we gathered on, the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. This land was never ceded. I came to this parliament after growing up in Pakistan and living in Australia for 21 years. My two countries, while quite different in culture, language, and lifestyle, share a colonial past. I would never presume to speak for what colonialism means for First Nations people in Australia, but I do know of its devastating legacy of conflict, exploitation, oppression, and dislocation. I'm particularly reminded of this day today, on August 14th, the day Pakistan gained independence from the British Raj 72 years ago. So let's accept once and for all that invasion, occupation, colonization, and settlement are bloody and they are violent. Let's view this history with eyes wide open. Let's acknowledge that First Nations people in Australia still face the worst of discrimination, vilification, and racism. This must end. And the start of that end must be a treaty or treaties with the First Nations people. Treaties that recognize the continuing occupation. Treaties that acknowledge the sovereignty of First Nations peoples. Treaties that respect their right to self-determination. Ye zameen hamesha se Aboriginal hai, aur hamesha Aboriginal rahegi. That's Urdu for this land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So here I am, saying farewell to this House and New South Wales Parliament, almost exactly 5 years on from when I delivered my first speech to the Legislative Council on August 21st, 2013. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve the people of New South Wales. Some of you are here in the gallery today. Thank you so much for being here. But more importantly, thank you for your love, your friendship, and for always supporting our collective project of making New South Wales a better place. I do hope I have met your expectations. I have tried my hardest, but I also acknowledge that there's always more that can be done and better ways of doing it. I can promise you that I will take the same ethic of hard work, the same burning desire to change the world, to rock the boat, and to challenge the status quo that brought me here to the Australian Senate next week. I hardly knew anyone in Australia when my husband, one-year-old son, and I moved here 26 years ago. I certainly did not have the network of connections that seems a prerequisite for a political career. And I couldn't, in my wildest dreams, have imagined being in New South Wales Parliament one day. My mum often mentions how her daughter, who didn't even want to go to school in her early years, has ended up as a member of Parliament. She couldn't be here tonight, but is watching the live feed from my brother's house in the US. So assalamu alaikum, Ammi. Thank you for trusting your daughter and finally giving in to what you called my stubbornness. My stubbornness to fight for the right to fly kites from the roof of our home, or play cricket like my older brothers did, or the many things that girls were not supposed to do. These childhood tussles, a strong sense of fairness, and the skills I honed persuading my mother have indeed come in handy in the political arena, while contesting long-held views that need changing, from decriminalizing abortion to a new approach on drugs to fighting racism and inequality. I sometimes still pinch myself when I walk in here. Even after 5 years, some days and nights, it feels surreal to be sitting in the oldest parliament in Australia amongst the rough and tumble of politics. After all, I grew up a world away in Lahore. I joined the Greens in my 30s. I did not come through political ranks of student unions, party apparatchiks, or political advisors. I joined Parliament after many years of working as an engineer in regional New South Wales, Sydney, and Pakistan as a consultant, an academic, and a local government officer. I had very little prior political experience. I did not really know what to expect when I got here. I came in with an open mind and an open heart, without too many set ideas about the who, what, and how of this chamber. The late and great Dr. John Kay took me under his wing, helping out all he could. But it was a pretty steep learning curve, with many unseen and unknown pitfalls. Some encounters and incidents completely rattled me, others pleasantly surprised me. Some were disheartening, others uplifting, giving me the strength to keep doing my job. For all the good, bad, and ugly of politics, I was determined to be myself, remain positive, and hold on to my idealism. This has been a challenge, but I may have come out the other end intact. My first year in this place was quite a rude awakening to New South Wales politics. A staggering 11 Liberal MPs, including the then Premier Barry O'Farrell, resigned or went to the backbench in murky circumstances. Almost in parallel, ICAC was investigating previous Labour ministers who would be found guilty of corrupt conduct. This was pretty appalling for me, especially since one of the reasons my husband and I left Pakistan for Australia was the rot of political corruption that had set in over there. It was also an indictment on the state political system where corruption was allowed to go on, unfettered. It's often said that in here, we walk in the hallways of power, where the wheeling and dealing happens, where the game of politics unfolds. I must say that notion has never sat well with me. I have struggled with this idea that politics is a game, where politicians are all-powerful and the public mere pawns. The power surely should lie with those that put us in here, the people of New South Wales. The conditions that allowed corruption to flourish in our state, the corporate money, the lobbying, the political patronage, remain and will remain without deep, permanent reform. Recent events indicate the truth of this. Trust in politics and politicians is the lowest it has been in some time. We can take a huge step forward towards restoring this trust by removing corporate donations from our political system and by ending this game of mates. On the brighter and lighter side, there have been those delightful and slightly bemusing moments when you discover that you have things in common with unlikely allies. Dr. Peter Phelps comes to mind with our shared views on decriminalizing drug use, legalizing and regulating cannabis, and supporting a decriminalized model of sex work. I have relished in my work in the transport and roads portfolios, putting to use the skills I acquired as an engineer and academic to investigate and expose flaws in the planning, development, and delivery of major infrastructure projects, from WestConnex to the Sydney Metro and the CBD and Southeast Light Rail and the cutting of the Newcastle rail line. In some cases, we completely unraveled the government's attempts to justify the unjustifiable. Within a couple of months of starting here, my motion to force the release of thousands of secret WestConnex papers passed the Legislative Council. Of the 38 boxes of information which should have been in the public domain, 16 were privileged. So I went about challenging this privilege claim and had my challenge upheld. I'm not ashamed to admit my inner nerd loved the hours of poring over the documents which revealed crucial information like plans for mass outsourcing of RMS Public Works. I was pleasantly surprised that the adversarial argy-bargy of this chamber thankfully did not make its way to our committee work. For my sins, I sat on 7 parliamentary committees, including the Procedures, Privileges, and Stay Safe committees, and was a member of 22 inquiries into everything from drug rehabilitation services and the performance of the EPA to the Windsor Bridge and road tolling. The Legislative Council committee system is a robust and powerful mechanism of investigation. It often results in politicians coming out of their party political positions and paying heed to the evidence provided by submissions and witnesses. So it seems we can work together, beyond the tribalism of party politics, beyond the adversarial shouting matches, beyond name-calling, and beyond the one-upmanship so often displayed in this chamber and the other. The times I've been most frustrated by the way decisions are made here is when policy, backed by overwhelming evidence, has been discarded to satisfy a narrow political agenda. the devastating land clearing laws which are causing deforestation, the rapid privatization of public assets and services, and the flow of public money to the gambling industry and cruel greyhound racing are all examples of these kinds of decisions. While I'm talking about parliamentary processes, I will take the opportunity to thank every single staff member of the Legislative Council. Sadly, I don't have time to name you all, but you definitely are the real stars here. The committee staff who spend endless hours planning, preparing, organizing hearings and witnesses, and then writing such fantastic, succinct reports from very complex information. The patience and good humor of Janelle, Beverly, Liz, Sam, Rebecca, and all the procedures and committees team throughout the countless questions my staff and I have asked them. Hansard for our spoken words, which they make so eloquent on paper and online. The Legislative Council attendants who are always there, smiling and happy to help, even in the wee hours of the morning. The amazing research and reference team of the Parliamentary Library. I think your workload might reduce a little bit with my departure. The cafe and catering team who deal with us at our pre-caffeinated and over-caffeinated worst. And last but not least, David Blunt, Kate, Stephen, and others in the clerk's office for explaining the ins and outs of parliamentary tactics, from legal challenges to protesting to the governor. They have done this with such grace, such professionalism every time I have approached them. Above all, I have cherished the opportunity to work with hundreds, if not thousands of people who live in this great state. People who do extraordinary work every single day just for the love of it. People whose love of natural places, passion for helping others here and elsewhere, compassion for animals, and determination to create a brighter, shared future represents an incredible contribution to making New South Wales the best we can be. I've stood with you in the streets demanding the closure of offshore detention centers and an end to our addiction to climate-destroying coal. In parks, at market stalls, in pubs, celebrating wins. In town halls and community centers, in town squares, outside abortion clinics demanding safe access and the unambiguous right to choose. In camping grounds to protect the Laird Forest, and on country roads being given move-on orders by police. In the rain, in the heat, in freezing cold, and in strong winds. For me, that has been and is the best part of politics. The pure pleasure and privilege of meeting with such kind and loving folk, standing alongside them on the front line, and in some small way being part of the activism that is the most powerful way of making change. So many times people have said to me, "I don't know how you do it, Mehreen." Well, I do it because of your courage, your commitment, and your inspiration. That's what keeps me going. Others say, "Better you than me." And while this does light a little spark of pride in me, to think that people feel I have the resilience to do something others won't even contemplate, for the most part, it troubles me that ordinary citizens in a democratic society feel disempowered to pursue political positions. This must also change. Those of us that are already here are responsible for behaving in a manner that encourages people to make the same journey as us, no matter where they come from, what their economic capacity or social standing is, what the color of their skin is, their religion, sexuality, or gender identity. If communities across New South Wales are feeling helpless to make their voices heard, then of course there is a problem with the system. But those working within the system are also at fault, especially if they're not using their obligation to listen to the people that they represent. One of the questions that I have been asked repeatedly is this: why the Greens? Why not do the hard work in a major party where you could be in government or be a minister? And then the clincher: why didn't you join Labour? But here's the deal. Being involved in politics is much more than being an MP in the government or being a minister. It's about making positive change. And for me, this doesn't come from positional power, but the collective power of the people outside this parliament. That has always been the case, and I hope it always will be. Of course, it definitely helps to have people in here who can bring those views and voices to bear on parliamentary debate. But the momentum and spark lie outside these walls. Sure, there have been times where I've questioned why I'm here. What's the point when you don't have the numbers? When decisions are so often made by discarding the facts, no matter how forcefully you incorporate them into the debate. The ban on greyhound racing was a startling exception, where the then Premier did take a stand off the back of a Special Commission of Inquiry, an overwhelming proof of systemic animal cruelty. But then they backflipped. I cried tears of joy and disbelief when the ban was announced, and tears of rage when it was reversed. That was one of the very lowest points in my time here. While debating the government's destructive land clearing laws, I proposed 64 amendments. Some, admittedly, were pushing my luck, but others were entirely reasonable. By the time the bill was passed at 4 a.m., not one was supported by the government. For me, who has lived and breathed the environment for my entire time in Australia, in my profession and as an activist, this was another one of those low points. But highs and lows often come together. The Greens' abortion law reform bill, which would have brought New South Wales from the back of the pack to the front in modernising the laws governing a medical procedure, was an example of this. Deciding whether to bring on the first ever bill to do this was a harrowing process, especially when many accused me of risking making things worse. 25 members of the House voted against decriminalising abortion, but just 2 stood here and told the people of New South Wales why. The anger at this lack of accountability was palpable in the community, especially from young women. We may have lost the vote on that day, but we have succeeded in activating tens of thousands of people on an issue that both major parties had ignored for decades. I will not lie, the personal cost of insults, abusive phone calls, and handwritten threats was heavy. But as the Honourable Penny Sharp mentioned in her contribution to that debate, the right of women to make decisions about their own lives will be back in this chamber again. The issue will not go away. And she was right. We have come together as a parliament and enacted part of our bill, safe access zones, for people accessing pregnancy termination in clinics. It is my honest belief that the removal of abortion from the Crimes Act is now not a matter of if, but when. These moments remind you of exactly why you are here, to represent those that would otherwise not be represented, the thousands in the community who join together to bring their issues to the table, those who want you to say what they think, the voiceless animals, or the one community member who has been failed by the system and wants to change it so that others are spared the same ordeal. Removing pregnancy discrimination from the workplace, securing driver license disqualification reform, co-sponsoring the first marriage equality bill, highlighting the rights of the disabled on public transport, knocking back compulsory ID for cyclists, and co-sponsoring the first bill to enforce divorces for trans people with my friend in the lower house, Alex Greenwich, are all examples of this. And I'm so happy that this particular discrimination has now been removed. Nothing is ever too small or too big to not take on or take up. You just need the will and the passion. And it is this collective power of passion that keeps me with the Greens. It is the courage we have to bring issues to the political agenda that no one else wants to touch that gives me the energy. We feel the fear and do it anyway. We take the risks because it is the right thing to do, with or without being credited for it, with or without being rewarded for it. It is the wonderful people I meet every single day from all walks of life that keeps this passion alive. If someone asked me today how I would describe my experience as a Greens MP in New South Wales Parliament, I would say I've relished almost every minute of it. The unsavory moments are still valuable, if for nothing more than the lessons learned. I'm grateful for the trust Greens members and then the community placed in a migrant Muslim woman with an accent. That trust was a heavy load to bear. I won't deny that. And it was a load made heavier by the level of toxic, racist, and sexist attacks and threats I'm subjected to, and some members of my family. Not because of what I'm doing, but because of who I am, where I come from, and this brown skin color. No matter how much I brush it aside, it does take its toll. I think we could all be a bit more aware of the sustained abuse that some of us have to weather. This might go some way to helping encourage others like me to put their hand up. It will help our parties, including my own party, be more representative of the diversity of contemporary Australian society and make this chamber look a bit more like the streets and suburbs of the country that we live in. But at the end of the day, it was a load so worth carrying. And it was made lighter as more and more people came to help and support the work I was doing. You can't do this job alone. You never achieve anything in life on your own, and my life is no different. There is no way I would be able to do my work without the dedicated team of staff I've been so lucky to have. Matt Hilton, who has been with me from day one and whose wisdom, wit, and easygoing nature is unparalleled. Maliha, Mike, Tamara, Natalie, and Belinda, who have given up their days and nights working on campaigns, on policy, events, media, communications, and constituent issues, making sure that our project to help people and change the world kept chugging along. And a special shout out to feminist powerhouse Darrell for her unwavering support and sage advice. I've been so blessed to have help from so many interns and volunteers throughout my time here. Thank you to all of you. You are why we have been able to really expand our work and reach out to so many communities. But there are loved ones who bear the brunt of our time as MPs, our families. I think every single colleague of mine here can vouch for this. Bronnie Taylor once told me that she had traveled 100,000 kilometers in just 2 years. That is a lot of time away from home and on the road. Courtney Hughes and Sarah Mitchell spend so much time away from their very young families. We all keep telling ourselves it is worth it. So to my family, Omar, Aisha, and Usman, I cannot do this without your unconditional love and support. I also cannot do it without the brutally honest advice you give me, whether I've asked for it or not. You have kept me grounded and down to earth by repeatedly telling me not to get a big head, or, oh, here goes mom again, thinking she's so good. These sometimes offhand and sometimes deliberate remarks have hopefully been enough to hold my ego in check and keep me on the straight and narrow. You have more often than not graciously accepted the fact that I could not be there for you many times when needed. I know that I can never make up for the time we have lost, but I hope I've made you proud with what I've done with that time I wasn't able to give you. Thank you for being the rocks in my life. While we are on family, my dearest sister-in-law, Naila, and the children, Nida and Ahmed, have made the journey from Pakistan to be here with us, and I'm delighted that you have come. Thank you so much. To my Greens colleagues, make no mistake, we have seen progressive change in New South Wales, and you have all been part of that movement. We helped bring such fringe issues into the mainstream, whether that be campaigning against coal seam gas, tackling climate change with renewable energy, pushing for Aboriginal justice, defending TAFE, or banning plastic bags. Whatever small differences we may have, we all share a commitment to social and environmental justice and taking on the Tories. Without the Greens planting the seeds of bold ideas, many issues would never receive the attention that they deserve. I leave this Parliament with mixed feelings. There's a sense of achievement, a sense of sadness, and a sense of excitement. I'm proud of what we have achieved together. I'm satisfied that I took up the opportunities to connect with and represent a large range of communities across the state, from multicultural and LGBTI groups to school and university students, and many others, including the Knitting Nanas of Gloucester, the Country Women's Association in Kyogle, queer Muslims, FOB gays, cannabis activists in Nimbin, the Youth Council in Armidale, the incredible women who run women's refuges and shelters in Bega and Wagga, and I'm proud to say I even tasted the fertile black soil of the Liverpool Plains with some young farmers from Breeza. Wherever and whenever possible, I opened up the Parliament to people for community film screenings, Engineers Australia events, the UN EVET Debating Championships for young people, for International Women's Day breakfasts, to hear radical feminist voices aloud in the People's House, and many more events. We shouldn't underestimate the symbolism of community events in Parliament, and to that end, I do lament the price hikes for room bookings, which makes these spaces inaccessible for communities. A Parliament House where only the rich and well-connected can showcase their work is no home to democracy at all. We also should not forget that the New South Wales Upper House has the lowest percentage of women of any house across Australia. As I look around me, I still can't see the bust of Virginia Chadwick, the first female president of New South Wales Legislative Council, which a few of us in this chamber have been pushing for. I hope to see her here soon, because it does signal that women have a permanent and enduring role in this place. President, the Honourable John Ajaka, assures me that he is looking into ways to make this happen. And while we are on the President, I'd really like to thank him for being a friend to me and for providing the opportunity to preside over this chamber in my role as temporary chair of committees. I did love calling you to order. I do leave here having failed in one objective, and that is beating the Honourable Mick Veitch in the number of questions asked on notice. I fell short of his admirable 351 set of questions by a mere 6 questions at 345. Yeah. I do confess I couldn't resist cheekily putting in some more questions on notice today. I will miss some of the relationships I formed with my colleagues in this chamber. I suspect it will be less easy with the larger number of members in the Senate, where I'm heading next week. Overall, I've had a ball. I've learned a lot. I've laughed and I've cried. We've shared secrets. We've sparred. We've worked together. And now it's time for me to take a bow, bid you all farewell, and start the next chapter. Thank you.
Mr. President, to suit the convenience of honourable members, I suggest that you now leave the chair and cause the bells to be rung at 8 p.m.
I will now leave the chair and cause the bells to be rung at 8 p.m.